I recently just read The Science of Scaling by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Now, this book I had pre-ordered, it came out. I read it the second day it was out. And I'm going to tell you, this is one of the books I have a love-hate relationship with. There was many aspects of this book that I loved, and many aspects of this book I cannot stand. Now, I am a huge fan of the work that Dr. Hardy did, and 10x is easier than 2x with Dan Sullivan. I've actually read that book over 10 times. I recently just read it 2 times again. I love that book. And this book takes a lot of that, but it kind of changes it. Now, if you've read this book, you might have a different opinion on this. And what I'm going to give is what my takeaway from the book. So this book review is not exactly word for word or a book review of what Dr. Hardy's talking about. It's how did this concept impact me? And I think this is the idea that when you have a goal and you're stuck in that goal. So for example, at Baritone, the company that I run, we have a $2.1 million revenue firm. And we've had this, we call it the 412 vision. And we want to get to 20 million, there should be $10 million. And we want to do that by 2032. And we've been stuck in this 2 million range for about 3 years, which is very common with a lot of firms, right? It's a level of complexity if you follow Gino Wickman. And so essentially, when we try to say we want to go a little bit further, or we want to figure out why we're not going further. And so this is my takeaway from the book of how to utilize what he's talking about in a different manner. Because see, I think the book's premise is more of a Grant Cardone, grow for growth's sake. That's my opinion, right? There's basically 2 things. Is one, we need to scale in 3 years. And the second part of it is you need to be extremely laser focused. That's my opinion, that's my analysis. This is not a word for word book review of what I would say Dr. Hardy would say his book's about. So when we look at this, one of the ways to, when you're stuck, is what if we wanted to grow 10x? So one of the ways to change your thinking is to change the quantity of the goal or the size of your goal. So instead of growing to 10 million, what if we wanted to grow to 21 million? And this is kind of the basic premise of the 10x is easier than 2x book, because when you start thinking this, it changes your mind. It gets you out of the rut. Dr. Hardy adds a new dimension to this in his book. And he says, let's not only put pressure to the size, let's put pressure to the time element. So not only am I going to start thinking, which I've already done this type of thinking in Strategic Coach Program with Dan Sullivan, and Dan Sullivan's book has forced me into that. But we're going to say, instead of doing it by 2032, let's do it in 3 years. And the whole point of doing this is not to grow in 3 years. It's not to grow for growth's sake. And this is where I think that I deviate a little bit further than Dr. Hardy does, but what really helped me out in this book. Because if you start thinking that the only answer to this is a simple answer, not an easy answer, it forces you to simplify. So for us, the only way to grow from 2 million to 21 million in 3 years, there's actually only one answer we've come up with. We've run this through with our team. You know, it's not like we bring on more financial planners, we bring on more clients. You can't scale that quick. It's just not possible for us to do it. The only way for us to do it is through M&A or purchase, right? So we'd have to go out and purchase another firm. Whether we grow to 3 million organically or 4 million organically and purchase the rest, or we purchase the whole amount, it's that simple of a solution. But here's where most people stop with this, and I think this is where, in my opinion, the book stops this, is this becomes our only motivation. And so a lot of times where we stopped the firm prior to reading this book, is we've said we don't want to do this. We believe culture is everything, and we believe this would destroy our culture, which is our biggest asset we have as a firm. So we get rid of this, but let's not get rid of it. Let's put everything on the table, and let's say there is no sacred cows, to use an EOS term, and we say we are going to purchase. Now the question becomes, if that's what we want to do, is that in the next 3 years we have to purchase a firm to get us up to 21 million in 3 years, the question becomes, how do we do that? And by how do we do that, what would I do differently today? And so in 10x versus 2x thinking, it's this 80-20 rule, 80% new and 20% old thinking. Let's replace that thinking. But the idea, and this is the key here, going down this path of saying, okay, not whether we want to do this, that it'd be good for our culture, bad for our culture. If we were going to do this, what is the answer of how to go about this? Well, I would start doing my stuff differently. The things I'm doing today, I would start networking differently. I'd start trying to find firms that were right culture alignment, that were bigger than us, and try to meet some retiring CEOs that want to sell out, or founders. I might start networking in private equity and start to grow with private equity. I would approach it different. As you start going down those bullet points, I do this different, I do this different, I do this different. The whole point of this exercise is to force you out of your comfort zone. It's very similar to the exercise that we've done before in our past, our team, and a lot of people don't like this analogy, but I always say, like, if we had a gun to our head, if somebody came to our head, put a gun to our head and said, you have to do this no matter what would you do differently? So when we start doing this, and we go through 1, and we go through 2, and we go through 3, because it's overly simple. Because when you grow big, all the small ideas go away. What we might realize is, oh my gosh, maybe we should be doing that today. Maybe that's going to drive the needle. Maybe we should be doing this differently today. Maybe this is my 80% of new thinking I should focus on today. That's the point of this book. I think it's a great book, in my opinion, to shock your thinking. But there's a lot of parts of the book that I just kind of feel like it's growing for growth's sake. It's more the Grant Cardone as opposed to what I call the Dan Sullivan 10X thinking that I love to do our firm all the time, is to think bigger, because the whole point is to simplify. So the premise to me of scaling is, how can I make it as simple as possible? And the only way to make it as simple as possible is to increase the size of the goal and shorten the time of the goal. Last thing I have from this book is, I always like to look at this part. He doesn't use this analogy in the book, but this is my analogy. If you ever played football or you follow football and you're a defensive back and you're covering a wide receiver, one of the things you want to do is use the sideline as a second defender. So in other words, I'm going back with the person. If I have to keep them between me and the sideline, that sideline, once they go out, they're out of bounds. It acts like another defender. To me, if you're going to be a cornerback and you're going to be doing size, this time just becomes another defender. It doesn't mean that you should do is just take all your goals and 10x them and never be satisfied and no contentment and always grow for growth's sake. It's more, to me, about how can we make a simple solution to why we're not pursuing our goals properly.